With exactly 30 days left until the college entrance exam, I could physically see my own exam score hovering above my head, but there was a bizarre catch. If I completed a practice paper, my score would instantly plummet by 10 points. Yet the moment I skipped class and fooled around, my score would inexplicably surge by 10 points. In my previous life, I completely fell for this trap, spending an entire month fooling around and pushing the floating score above my head to a staggering 710. But on the day the results were released, I actually scored a miserable 40. And that glorious 710 somehow appeared on my younger brother's report card. My parents were absolutely furious, throwing me into an electronics factory to fend for myself, and that very night, I was cornered by a group of thugs in a dark alley and beaten to death. As my life slipped away in the mud, I heard my brother Shenjing Zhou's mocking voice sneering, "So what if you always outshined me since we were kids? You still got completely played by the score above your head." That was the moment I finally realized the floating exam score had been entirely controlled by my brother all along. So when I opened my eyes again, I was shocked to find I had been reborn exactly 1 month before the college entrance exam with a bright red 600 hovering above my head. "Brother, let's do some practice papers together tonight," Shenjing Zhou offered, but as I looked at the paper he handed me, I impatiently snatched it and threw it straight into the fire. Grumbling, "It's almost the exam, what the hell is there left to study? I'm going to play video games." The score above my head instantly increased, and Shenjing Zhou feigned a look of regret. But as he turned around, he couldn't suppress the smirk creeping up the corners of his mouth. Little did he know this grand play had only just begun. Just as I was about to head back to my room, my brother relentlessly grabbed me again, trying to drag me to a teacher for tutoring, claiming the teacher was still waiting. I forcefully shook off his hand and snapped, "What's the point of last-minute cramming? If you want to go, go by yourself and don't delay my rank climbing in my game." He replied with the exact same line from my previous life, warning me not to drop my guard just because my foundation was good, clearly testing to see if I still believed in the floating score system. Meeting his gaze, I let out a mocking scoff and confidently declared, "Don't worry, even without studying, I'll still score higher than you." Watching his retreating back as he desperately suppressed his laughter, my eyes narrowed dangerously. "My dear brother, the one dropping his guard this time is you." Returning to my bedroom, I saw my floating score had already risen to 620, so I quickly locked the door, but the very second I flipped open a textbook, my score began to violently drop. By the time I finished reviewing the final key concept, the score had plummeted straight down to 580, prompting me to open the hidden WeChat monitor I had long planted in Shenjing Zhou's room. On the screen, he was pacing anxiously, muttering, "Why is Shen Yanxi's score dropping? That animal said he wasn't going to study, but he must be secretly grinding hard behind my back. Why isn't he absorbing the scores?" A cold, mechanical voice suddenly responded to him, instructing him not to panic, explaining that once my score dropped below 500, the system would flag it as a violation and instantly cause my body to explode, meaning if I wanted to study, I was actively seeking death. A chilling wave washed down my spine, instantly drenching my shirt in cold sweat, but Shenjing Zhou just laughed maliciously, sneering that a piece of trash like me deserved it for messing with his mindset. Staring at my continuously dropping score, I furrowed my brows deeply, realizing that since studying was literally a dead end, I had to find a different way to trick the system. Over the next hour, I tried countless different postures, but as long as my brain was actively thinking, the score kept crashing wildly, and just as it approached the 500 red line, the numbers began flashing violently in warning. My heart pounded furiously as I immediately threw down the book, rushed out of the house, and booked a private room at a bar for the entire night, aggressively swaying on the dance floor until I saw the score finally climb back up to 630, allowing me to greedily collapse onto the sofa. Through the monitor, I saw Shenjing Zhou breathe a massive sigh of relief, his face full of contempt as he muttered, "I knew Shen Yanxi was an idiot. Seeing his score rise must have driven him crazy with joy. Let him go wild. He thinks that 630 will be his, but in the end, it'll all become mine." Looking at his greedy, ugly expression, I coldly smiled and turned off the monitor, whispering to myself, "Idiot, I've already found the system's bug." I tossed aside a piece of chalk and lay back on the sofa in the bar's private room, staring up at the walls and ceiling that I had completely covered in complex mathematical formulas. That was what I had actually been doing all night. Because the system judged I was physically in an entertainment venue, my score didn't drop at all. And just then, a waiter knocked on the door to urge me to pay the bill. I immediately dialed Shenjing Zhou's number, frantically claiming, "Brother, I'm stuck at the bar. Hurry and transfer some money. It's an emergency." Shenjing Zhou asked in feigned shock why I would go to a place like that, acting anxious while secretly gloating. I casually replied that I just needed to relax from the pressure. begging him not to tell our parents and urging him to transfer 10,000 yuan quickly. He hypocritically reminded me the exam was approaching and I should come home, but I snapped back, asking if he was crazy, because if our parents found out, they'd drag me back to study. Please, brother, I begged. I just want to mess around for these last few days. Shen Jingzhou pretended to be highly conflicted before agreeing, transferring me 15,000 yuan, which was his entire life savings. Armed with his money, I comfortably isolated myself in the bar for an entire month, only returning home the day before the college entrance exam with bloodshot eyes from pulling all-nighters, while the score above my head had skyrocketed to a glorious 710. Shen Jingzhou smilingly handed me my exam admission ticket, saying he was glad I finally came back and didn't miss the exam. But my mother's voice pierced my eardrums with a disgusted scream, calling me a bastard and demanding to know why I even bothered coming back right before the exam instead of just staying away forever. Even though I knew they heavily favored my brother, my heart still felt like it had been violently stabbed, and just as I managed to force out a bitter smile, my father's heavy slap landed squarely on my face. "You shameless thing, you still have the nerve to smile? If it weren't for your grandmother insisting, you wouldn't even deserve to take this exam," he roared. I protected my head and shouted, but he viciously grabbed my ear, the sheer pain making me instinctively resist, only for him to kick me hard in the knee, forcing me to kneel heavily on the floor. My father showed absolutely no intention of stopping, his kicks and punches raining down on me as I yelled, asking if he wanted to beat me to death the day before the exam. He spat back that since I fooled around in a bar for a month, I didn't need to take the exam anyway, accusing me of probably catching some filthy disease before kicking me straight into my room and declaring he wouldn't let me go. It was only when I mentioned that Grandma said I must participate in the exam, otherwise there would be consequences, that he finally stopped his assault, angrily muttering that even if I went, I would just be a public embarrassment. Clutching my tearing, agonizingly painful ear, I was sent to the exam center alongside Shen Jingzhou, and after the 2-day examination concluded, Shen Jingzhou rushed toward our parents with a radiant, flushed face, bragging that he felt he performed exceptionally well, and asking if we could hold a celebration banquet on the very day the scores were released. Our parents' eyes practically overflowed with doting affection as they agreed, saying that since he was so confident, they would invite Grandma too, so she could see who the true hope of the Shen family was. Shen Jingzhou nodded enthusiastically, promising that even though Grandma didn't like him, he would definitely give her a massive surprise this time. Right at that exact moment, the fake 710 score hovering above my head completely vanished, and watching Shen Jingzhou's incredibly confident back, I curled my lips into a resentful smirk, silently asking, "Brother, are you ready to open your mystery box?" On the night the exams finished, my parents took Shen Jingzhou on a graduation trip, completely forgetting about me at home, which actually made me breathe a sigh of relief as I dialed a number I had memorized by heart. "Uncle," I said into the phone, "I've solved that incredibly difficult problem you gave me last time." The voice on the other end trembled with excitement, telling me I had done a massive favor for the research institute, and that very night I was secretly escorted into the facility. For the entire following month, I worked tirelessly, forgetting to eat and sleep as I derived advanced formulas alongside that uncle who was actually a leading figure in the mathematics field, until the day the preliminary scores were released, when he arranged a dedicated luxury car to send me directly to the family's celebration banquet. Pushing open the massive doors of the banquet hall, I saw my parents and Shen Jingzhou, who had just returned from their trip, surrounded by fawning guests like stars orbiting the moon. These people weren't here just to celebrate grades, they were here because of Grandma's ironclad promise. Between Shen Jingzhou and me, whoever got admitted to the better university would inherit every single share under her name. Grandma was the absolute, undeniable controller of the Shen family, making this event essentially the selection ceremony for the new CEO. Taking a deep breath, I walked straight toward Grandma, who warmly grabbed my hand and asked if I was confident, to which I nodded firmly, swearing I would never disappoint her. In this massive, cold house, only Grandma truly treated me with genuine love. In my past life, when I was framed and failed the exam, she was devastated, and just 3 days after I was kicked out, she died of a sudden heart attack. This time, I absolutely refused to let that tragedy repeat itself. Shen Jingzhou immediately stepped up, dramatically asking why I was lying to Grandma, loudly accusing me of fooling around in a bar for a month before the exam, and questioning how I could possibly have done well, asking if my conscience didn't hurt for betraying Grandma's trust. He triumphantly pulled out photos of me at the bar and displayed them to everyone, prompting my father to shoot me a look of pure disgust, growling that if he were me, he wouldn't even have the face to walk through these doors. He loudly proclaimed that Jingzhou estimated his score at 700, while I probably couldn't even score half of that, declaring that after today, the Shen family would belong to my brother, and I would have to wag my tail and beg him for scraps just to survive. The guests, always quick to follow the wind, began mocking me too, calling me a useless freeloader who dared to put on airs, claiming they saw me playing wildly at the bar and that my exam was definitely ruined. They fawned over the second young master, who estimated a 700, calling him the seed of a provincial top scholar, and congratulating my father on having such a capable successor, while ruthlessly asking if I had drank my brain to mush, joking that if going to clubs could make someone a top scholar, schools wouldn't need to exist. As mocking laughter echoed through the massive hall, everyone eagerly waited to see me humiliate myself, and my father coldly snorted, slamming the keys to a limited edition supercar heavily onto the table. "If you score higher than Jingju, this car is yours," he challenged. I casually glanced at the keys, my eyes full of complete disdain, scoffing that it was just a broken car key, and that I thought CEO Shen had more guts than that. "Since you have so much faith in Shen Jingzhou, do you dare to bet every single piece of real estate under your name?" I challenged, leaving my parents stunned, clearly never expecting me to dare call their bluff like this. The surrounding guests started jeering, claiming a 700 was a guaranteed ticket to the top universities, Tsinghua and Peking, and egging my father on, saying he shouldn't be afraid because even if he bet the entire Shen company, a piece of trash like me couldn't possibly win. I raised an eyebrow, smirking provocatively as I noted that it seemed CEO Shen didn't actually have that much confidence in his supposedly proud youngest son. "You rebellious bastard, who are you trying to goad?" my father roared, claiming he wasn't afraid of me because I could never surpass Jingzhou in this lifetime. Shen Jingzhou puffed out his chest, looking completely victorious as he swore he would absolutely never lose to me. My father immediately summoned his lawyer to notarize the bet on the spot, officially declaring that today whoever got admitted to the better school would take total ownership of all assets under both his and grandma's names. The very second he finished speaking, the official college entrance exam score checking system opened, and Shen Jingzhou eagerly rushed to the laptop. "Since everyone is waiting, I'll set the standard for my big brother first," he announced, his index finger flying across the keyboard to hit the enter key. The screen refreshed, glaringly displaying a total score of exactly 700, sending the entire venue into an explosive frenzy of cheers. People screamed that 700 was godly, that the second young master was practically guaranteed the top provincial spot, and that the Shen family's ancestral graves must be smoking with good luck. Compliments flooded in like a tidal wave, but I simply narrowed my eyes, thinking to myself that this 700 score was supposed to be mine. My father cast me a deeply contemptuous side glance, ordering me to see the reality, telling me that from now on in this house I needed to tuck my tail between my legs, act like a dog for my brother, and read his moods, threatening to break my legs if I ever dared hold him back. "I haven't even checked my score yet. How can you be so sure I'm the one acting as his dog and not him carrying my shoes?" I shot back, causing my father to rage that I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. But before he could finish, I slapped the laptop so hard my hand stung. My cheek was still burning from the earlier slap, and Shen Jingzhou immediately put on a heartbroken, deeply pained expression, asking, "Brother, is it really that hard to admit you're a piece of trash? Why must you be so stubborn?" He aggressively pushed the laptop right in front of me, demanding I check my score so he could see my true strength, warning me that if my score wasn't higher, I would have to kneel on the spot, kowtow to him, and admit my faults. Under the watchful, judging eyes of the entire crowd, I calmly entered my exam registration number. The web page jumped, and my total score appeared 50. The crowd instantly fell into a dead silence before erupting into an ear-piercing roar of mocking laughter. They mocked that I could have scored more than that just by bubbling answers with my eyes closed, asked if my brain was filled with cement, and praised the heavens I wasn't inheriting the family business, otherwise it would go bankrupt. He was acting so arrogant earlier, I thought he was holding back some ultimate move, but it turns out he was just holding back a massive joke. They sneered. Shen Jingzhou stood over me demanding I kneel since I couldn't even break 100 points, maliciously offering that as the future head of the family, he would send me to the best mental hospital, but if I kowtowed loud enough, he might graciously let me get treatment at home. With a single command from Shen Jingzhou, my father actually cooperated with the bodyguards, brutally kicking the back of my knee, the intense pain forcing me to drop to one knee on the ground. I looked desperately toward Grandma, my final sliver of hope, but the old woman turned her back to me with eyes full of utter disappointment, sighing, "Yancy, you have truly chilled my heart." I quickly told her the admission results hadn't been released yet, and a low score didn't mean I had no school to attend, but this statement only made the surrounding laughter even louder and more grating, with people joking if I planned to attend stay-at-home university with a pathetic 50 points. They called me a shameless dead pig unafraid of boiling water, praising the second young master for being too kind kind and saying trash like me should have been swept out the door ages ago. Before I could even attempt to stand up, a shiny leather shoe ruthlessly stepped on the side of my face, violently pressing my head down into the carpet as Shen Jingzhou looked down at me from above, his voice dripping with pure venom as he declared, "You, Shen Yanxi, will forever be a useless piece of trash." Shen Jingzhou, don't celebrate too early, I gritted out from under his foot. Tsinghua and Peking universities might not necessarily want you. He laughed arrogantly, telling me to open my dog eyes wide because the admissions team was already here, swearing he would make me personally witness his infinite glory, and that on the day he enrolled, he would personally cripple my hands and feet and throw me into a mental asylum to rot. Shen Jingzhou straightened his suit, quickly plastered on a gentle, humble smile, and strode confidently toward the entrance to greet the group of suited officials. But the very moment he extended his hand, his smile froze rigidly on his face. The leading admissions director didn't even glance at him, bypassing him completely as if he didn't exist, and I knew the real show had finally begun. The director walked straight through the parted crowd and stopped flawlessly right in front of me, extending his hand. "Hello, student Shen Yanxi. I am the admissions director for Tsinghua and Peking universities. May I ask if you have the intention to sign with us?" he asked politely. The entire hall dropped into a deathly silence as Shen Jingzhou lunged forward wildly, screaming, "Teacher, you must have made a mistake. I am Shen Jingzhou. I'm the one who scored 700. That is a piece of trash who scored 50. The admissions director frowned in intense annoyance, violently shaking him off. "There is absolutely no mistake. We are specifically looking for Shen Yanxi. I reviewed his photo before coming here. It is impossible for me to misidentify him." Now even my parents were completely dumbfounded, while Shen Jingzhou's face turned ghastly pale, his lips twitching violently as he stammered that it was impossible, that I scored a 50, and demanded to know if the top university had gone insane for trying to recruit an idiot. The director's face hardened as he sternly warned Shen Jingzhou to watch his words. "Student Shen Yanxi is a crucial member of the National Scientific Research Institute's S-Tier Talent Introduction Program. Are you genuinely questioning the judgment of the National Scientific Research Institute?" he boomed. He declared that it absolutely didn't matter what I scored on the entrance exam. Even if I scored a flat 0, as long as I existed, the doors of Tsinghua and Peking universities would be forever open to me because this was an extraordinary, rule-breaking special admission. His words stirred up massive waves among the crowd, who began whispering in awe about the legendary S-Tier talent program, suddenly realizing I wasn't hiding my abilities, but had simply poured all my immense energy into high-level research. The way everyone looked at me shifted instantly from sheer disgust to profound awe and uncertainty, while Grandma, her hands trembling violently with excitement, pushed past the bodyguards to grab my hands, asking if what they said was true. "Yes, Grandma," I replied gently, explaining that for the past year I had been working alongside her old friend's son to break through complex formulas, and we had just finally solved it a few days ago. She praised me endlessly, crying out that working on a project with the math genius meant our Shen family had produced a true, unparalleled genius, completely reversing the winds of public opinion as guests rushed to flatter Grandma, praising the eldest young master for remaining silent only to shock the world. The admissions director finally snapped back to reality, turning his head to look at the completely frozen, dazed Shen Jingzhou standing beside him. "Oh, so you're the Shen Jingzhou who scored 700? he asked. Before Shen Jingzhou could even speak, the director's eyes lit up with a practical idea, suggesting that since we were brothers, we should both sign together so we could look out for each other. Instantly, everyone's gaze refocused on Shen Jingzhou, and the media reporter's camera flashes fired like crazy. But Shen Jingzhou reacted like a cat whose tail had been brutally stomped on, jumping up and screaming hysterically. "I absolutely refuse to go to the same school as him," he shrieked. "There's no way a piece of trash who scored 50 could solve a national research problem. There is absolutely something shady going on here. If a top-tier institution like yours accepts this kind of person, I severely doubt the actual value of your university." The admissions director's face flushed beet red with absolute fury, but just as he prepared to defend the university's honor, the murmurs of doubt from the surrounding crowd began to grow louder. People started whispering that it was indeed strange. How could someone capable of top-tier mathematical research score in the double digits on a math-heavy exam? The score was genuinely too absurd, leading them to speculate whether there was a dark inside deal, suggesting either the research results were bought or there was a massive ghost in the college entrance exam scores. "Since my brother and everyone else is so incredibly curious," I spoke up loudly, my voice cutting through the noise, "I actually also feel that my exam score is a bit problematic. Why don't we officially apply to pull and review my original exam papers?" "No, absolutely not!" Shen Jingzhou screamed, his voice tearing in sheer panic. He babbled that reviewing papers was a complicated process, accusing me of intentionally stalling for time, claiming only guilty people caused so much trouble, and demanding that since I had done something shameful, I should honestly confess instead of wasting public resources. But before his words could even echo away, a reporter aggressively shoved a smartphone screen right into his face. Second young Master Shen, the public opinion on the internet right now is completely shifting against you. Netizens are asking why you were the one fiercely questioning your brother's grades, yet the moment he actively demands a review, you're suddenly panicking and trying to stop it. This is a classic case of, I can investigate you, but you can't investigate me. Shen Jingzhou instantly choked on his words, his eyes darting around evasively as he weakly stammered that he was just trying to save me some face, claiming pulling out a 50-point paper would be too humiliating. The admissions director looked at me with extreme solemnity. Student Shen Yancy, are you absolutely certain you want to apply to retrieve your exam papers? This will immediately trigger the highest level of national verification procedures. I am completely certain, I replied, without a trace of hesitation. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin, bringing humiliation upon yourself, my father roared, but Grandma violently slammed her cane against the floor. Shut your mouth, she commanded, her majestic aura instantly forcing my father to shrink back in fear. Very quickly, the massive screen on the stage flickered to life, and my original exam papers were projected in ultra-high definition, sending an immediate uproar through the entire venue. This wasn't a blank or randomly scribbled paper at all. The densely packed handwriting was impeccably neat and powerful, and the step-by-step problem-solving processes were actually more detailed than the official answer keys. Several veteran teachers in the crowd rushed closer, their brows furrowing deeply in pure astonishment as they realized every single major question was answered flawlessly, and I had even provided 3 completely different solutions for the impossibly difficult final question. It's impossible to only give this paper 50 points. Absolutely impossible, they gasped. Even without officially tallying it up, this paper alone is guaranteed to be at least a near-perfect score. The public opinion instantly exploded into chaos, and the accompanying technical staff immediately intervened to investigate the discrepancy. Exactly 5 minutes later, the undeniable truth was exposed to the world. They found the error. We found it! There was a critical anomalous error code in the system's input phase. Student Shen Yancy's true, verified score is exactly 706 points, with absolute perfect scores in both mathematics and comprehensive sciences, the technician announced. The crowd gasped that the top scholar was almost framed to death, praising the heavens that the research institute had recruited me. Otherwise, it wouldn't just be a massive loss for me, but a tragedy for the entire country. As the crowd sighed in relief over this massive, shocking misunderstanding, I had absolutely no intention of letting the show end there. Looking directly into the media cameras, I curled my lips into a freezing, calculated smirk. Since we have irrefutably proven that the system can make massive errors, I believe I have perfectly valid reasons to highly suspect that a certain someone's perfect 700 score might also be completely fraudulent. My father waved his hand impatiently, arguing that Jingzhou had always had excellent grades since childhood, and telling me not to push my luck since things were already chaotic enough. I calmly explained that the scores of the top 50 students in the entire province are strictly automatically shielded by the system, remaining completely locked until the Tsinghua and Peking admissions teams arrive to decrypt them. Since Shen Jingzhou supposedly scored exactly 700, making him a top provincial scorer, how on earth was his score able to pop up instantly the moment he checked? Is he the system's biological son? My words instantly woke up the crowd from their stupor. They realized I was absolutely right. A genuine 700-point top scholar would definitely be shielded by the system. There was absolutely no way he could have checked it directly on a standard laptop. There's a ghost in the machine! We must instantly review Shen Jingzhou's exam papers, the crowd demanded. Shen Jingzhou's face drained of all color, becoming as white as a sheet of paper, and he frantically lunged forward to rip the projector cord out, but the bodyguards immediately pinned him brutally to the floor. The massive screen switched inputs, and the exam papers belonging to Shen Jingzhou were fully exposed for the entire world to see. After a moment of deathly, suffocating silence, the crowd erupted in explosive exclamations. What kind of demonic scribbles are these? Why are there massive blank spaces everywhere? The admissions director's face turned iron blue with fury. Every single multiple choice question is completely wrong, and for the major questions he literally only wrote the word solution. How could this absolute garbage paper possibly get 700 points? Is the grading system completely blind? The technical staff furiously recalculated his true score, brutally announcing the final result. A pathetic, real total of 133 points. Then where the hell did that 700 come from earlier? the crowd roared. Cheating! This is the most blatant cheating imaginable. It must be thoroughly investigated immediately. The Tsinghua and Peking admissions team instantly darkened their expressions, formally declaring on the spot that because student Shen Jingzhou was suspected of severe academic misconduct and illegal activities, Tsinghua University was permanently revoking his admission qualifications and immediately reporting the entire incident to the National Department of Education. Shen Jingzhou suffered a complete mental breakdown, sobbing hysterically as he lunged wildly toward me. "Why did you have to destroy me?" he wailed. The crowd sneered back that he must be mentally ill, pointing out that he was the one who aggressively demanded the papers be checked in the first place. Now that the boomerang hit you, you finally know it hurts. You entirely brought this upon yourself. My mother, however, acted like a complete lunatic, fiercely shielding Shen Jingzhou, while my father raised his hand, preparing to slap me across the face again, screaming, "You vicious animal! Will you only be satisfied when you force your own brother to death?" This time, I didn't dodge or flinch because the police had already violently pushed open the banquet hall doors. Pointing my finger squarely at Shen Jingzhou, I spoke with absolute, chilling calmness. "Officers, I am officially filing a real name report against Shen Jingzhou for directly colluding with external parties to illegally alter national college entrance exam data, committing severe exam fraud." My father tried to throw a tantrum and stop them, but the police instantly pinned his arms behind his back, sharply warning him, "What are you doing? Do you want to come to the station with us too?" Shen Jingzhou's face looked like dead ashes, yet he still desperately, insanely tried to deny it, screaming, "I didn't do it." I walked right up to him and whispered mockingly, "Little brother, make sure you confess everything honestly to get a lighter sentence." Shen Jingzhou was unceremoniously dragged away by the police, crying and screaming for our parents to save him all the way to the door. My parents immediately tried to throw a massive scene, which deeply annoyed Grandma, who waved her hand and coldly requested, "Comrade Police, please take this couple away to educate them as well. They're causing a massive disturbance here, and we simply cannot control them." The very second their screaming voices faded away, I formally accepted the olive branch extended by Tsinghua and Peking universities. Grandma was absolutely overjoyed, instantly transferring total control of the entire company and every single asset she owned directly into my hands, even assigning her personally trained elite secretary to serve me. "CEO Shen, whatever orders you have, you can hand them directly to me," the secretary stated professionally. Looking at the assets my parents technically still held on paper, I coldly instructed, "Then let's transfer all these assets that I rightfully won in the bet into my name immediately." The secretary promptly handed me the official asset transfer agreements to sign. After signing my name with a flourish, I looked out the window in the direction the police sirens had faded and issued my very first executive order to the chief financial officer. "Immediately freeze every single supplementary credit card and all liquid funds under my good father's name. From this day forward, do not let them take a single penny from this company." Over the course of the next week, the entire hierarchy of the Shen family flipped upside down. Those spineless, two-faced guests who had ruthlessly mocked me at the banquet were now lining up outside the company building, literally slapping their own faces and begging for my forgiveness. I smilingly helped them up, but the moment I turned around, I permanently severed every single future business collaboration with them. Because in my book, if you betray me once, I will never use you again. However, there was still one massive mystery left completely unsolved. Who exactly was the shadowy mastermind operating behind the scenes that had the sheer power to hack the national exam system and alter Shen Jingzhou's scores? The answer only revealed itself when the young, formidable female CEO of the Wen Corporation, Wen Jining, actively requested a private meeting with me. "CEO Shen, I have looked forward to meeting you," she said, her aura fiercely intimidating in a stunning red dress. "It was you who helped Shen Jingzhou alter his scores," I stated, cutting straight to the chase without any pleasantries. Wen Jining elegantly swirled the red wine in her glass. "Don't misunderstand, it was strictly a business transaction," she explained coolly. Shen Jingzhou promised that once the deed was done, he would transfer 300 million to the Wen Corporation. Unfortunately, he turned out to be a completely useless piece of trash who couldn't even stand up when supported. To express her apologies and to propose a brand new collaboration, she slid a confidential folder across the table toward me, and as I read the documents inside, my blood ran completely cold. The documents revealed a horrifying truth. I was actually not my current mother's biological child at all. I was the child of my father's previous wife. When my biological mother was heavily pregnant with me, my father was already secretly having a passionate affair with the woman who is now my stepmother. The sheer rage and heartbreak caused my biological mother to go into premature labor, and she tragically passed away the moment she gave birth to me. My father felt absolutely zero guilt. Instead, he immediately married his mistress, my current stepmother, and brought her right into the house. No wonder. I muttered, my mind reeling. No wonder their hatred and disgust toward me was so incredibly pure and absolute. No wonder Grandma always treated them with such icy, unyielding disdain. Wen Jining offered a marriage alliance between us to strongly unite our companies and devour the entire market. But I coldly rejected her, stating I had zero interest in marrying an accomplice. However, I offered, if you are willing to testify in court and completely hammer the final nail into Shen Jingzhou's coffin, I can consider yielding 2% of the profits to you on the massive South City project. Wen Jining was a brilliant, highly pragmatic businesswoman, so she instantly chose the latter option. With the chain of evidence completely sealed tight, Shen Jingzhou was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison due to the extreme severity of his crimes. While he rotted in a cell, I utilized those 2.5 years to not only prematurely complete a grueling double major at Tsinghua and Peking universities, but also to completely double the massive business empire of the Shen Corporation. 2 years later, when Shen Jingzhou was finally released from prison, he wasn't greeted by luxury cars or fragrant flowers. Instead, he was met by his parents, who had long since been reduced to pathetic stray dogs. Without any source of income, my father's temper had become increasingly violent and explosive, turning him into a raging alcoholic who drank heavily all day long. Shen Jingzhou originally tried to storm into the company to throw a tantrum and demand money from me, but the security guards I had carefully arranged grabbed him and literally tossed him out onto the street like a bag of garbage. Humiliated and furious, he redirected all his explosive rage onto his parents, screaming, "It's all your fault, you useless old bags of bones. You couldn't even protect a single company, and you just stood there watching that wild bastard ride on top of my head." My father, blinded by absolute fury, viciously slapped Shen Jingzhou across the face, roaring, "You ungrateful, white-eyed wolf! Who do you think we became like this for?" My stepmother shrieked like a banshee, lunging forward to violently scratch at my father's face, and the heated argument instantly devolved into a brutal, bloody, physical brawl. In utter despair, my father filed for divorce, repeatedly trying to sneak back to Grandma's estate to beg for her mercy, but Grandma completely shut him out every single time. Meanwhile, Shen Jingzhou, utterly terrified of losing his very last shred of shelter and financial support, hired a few local street thugs, originally just wanting to violently intimidate his father, into not abandoning him and his mother. But as fate would have it, on that specific day, my father was heavily intoxicated, his words incredibly aggressive and provoking. The thugs, lacking any sense of restraint, accidentally pushed my father entirely off the rooftop in the heat of the moment, and he died instantly upon hitting the ground. Terrified that their murder would be exposed, the desperate thugs immediately hunted down Shen Jingzhou to silence him, and ultimately, Shen Jingzhou died from multiple brutal stab wounds, bleeding out in a filthy, dark alleyway, exactly like I had in my previous life. My stepmother personally witnessed both her husband and her precious son die horrific, violent deaths, and her mind snapped instantly. She went completely insane on the spot and was permanently locked away in a high-security mental asylum. The exact day I received all this news, I was standing quietly in a serene graveyard, gently holding a beautiful bouquet of white chrysanthemums in front of my biological mother's tombstone. The photo of the woman on the tombstone was gentle and stunningly beautiful, and her eyes looked exactly like mine. As the warm sunlight finally pierced through the heavy clouds, illuminating the cold, hard marble, I smiled softly. "Mom, look. The absolute truth is finally known to the world, and every single person who ever hurt us has received their ultimate, inescapable retribution." The wind gently rustled through the treetops, sounding almost like a tender, comforting sigh from above. I slowly stood up, carefully straightened my pristine suit, and turned around to walk toward the sleek, black luxury sedan waiting quietly by the roadside. The revenge was finally over, but the glorious, limitless life she had given me had only just begun.